Okay, so one of the most inspirational parts of my visit to Israel, and most people's visit to Israel, is not the Western Wall. I'm sorry, the Western Wall is the most inspiration part of visit to Israel. But personally, my most inspirational moment, we all have different, things that inspire us or hit us in the, in a specific time or moment. For me, it was a place in Jerusalem called Ammunition Hill, where it's basically where the toughest battle for Jerusalem was fought in 1967, by the Israeli army, by the IDF against the Jordanian army. And it describes in detail it describes the emotions that the soldiers had as they were recapturing Jerusalem. And for the first time since Bar Kokhba, they brought Jerusalem under Jewish control. And it was so eye-opening, because when I was watching the videos, they have this big like theater there where they show videos of the war with different stories. And the first time that I saw this, I was around the age of the soldiers at the time. I think I was 19 when I saw this for the first time. And I was imagining, because these soldiers were also around 19 when they were in this position. And just to think about what it was like to have to be a soldier, putting your life at risk to capture the city of Jerusalem, and to bring it under Jewish hands, to be able to capture the Temple Mount and say that, the famous words, Har Habayit Biyadenu, that the Temple Mount is in our hands. I mean, the emotions, the symbolism is very, very present. And for me, that was my most inspirational part. The reason why I say this is because the question is, we still have to ask ourselves from an intellectual point of view about what is so special about the city of Jerusalem, why it's so meaningful to us, why it's so important to us. And if it's so important to us, then how come certain events in our history were not actually centered in Jerusalem, as we're going to see soon? So we're really going to tackle it from an intellectual point of view, a historical point of view, of what our connection is to Yerushalayim, but then from a Torah point of view, and more specifically the esoteric part of the Torah point of view, understanding the importance of the spiritual connection and the spiritual gateway that Jerusalem presents to the entire, not just the entire world, but the entire universe. So let's get right into it. We're going to read a lot of historical texts, but then we're going to go into the discussion mode of understanding it and making it real. So this is right after the Six-Day War. On June 28th, the Israeli government announced the official unification of Jerusalem would take place the following morning. Till today, that day is celebrated on the Hebrew calendar in Iyar as Yom Yerushalayim. Some people feared that too swift an opening of the 19-year-old barriers would lead to tensions and violence, but the Minister of Defense, Moshe Dayan, was empathetic that there should be no hesitation, no delays. And by the way, Moshe Dayan was not a religious person. He was not a spiritual person at all. And yet what's so amazing about this, and I mean, I could watch the videos over and over and over again, is the amount of deep-rooted connection every single Jewish person felt to the city of Jerusalem during this period of the Six-Day War, of the aftermath of the Six-Day War, is just unprecedented, because it wasn't a matter of religion, it wasn't a matter of level of observance, it wasn't a matter of, it was something that was so deep-rooted in every single Jewish heart that Jerusalem is now in our hands. And the fact that Moshe Dayan was so passionate about making it, right away, making like the reunification right away, definitely represents that. So dawn came and we did it. Teddy Kovac later wrote, "We removed all the fences, dismantled the checkposts, and started blowing up all the divided walls." Because up until then, if you're not familiar, Jerusalem was a divided city. The Jordanians were in control of the old city of Jerusalem. The only real part of Jerusalem that was in Jewish hands was what's today known as Mea Sha'arim, which was the only part of like the old area, not the old city. It's not called the old city, but basically the only part of of what was then Jerusalem that was in Jewish hands was the Mea Shearim area. And the Jordanians would stand on top of the walls of the old city, and they would take a sniper shot at any person they would see on the other side. So it was a divided wall. There were checkpoints, there were borders, it was very, you could not get across. In fact, from 1948 to 1967, no Jew was allowed to visit the Western Wall or the old city of Jerusalem. It was impossible for any Jewish person to get there. So this was a major milestone. So it finally became a physical unity, a single city. So that's just the historical aspect of it. But now let's take a look at the Torah connection of Israel and Jerusalem. And then we're going to ask some tough questions. So this is from the Rambam. And the Rambam, the reason why we always bring the Rambam is the Rambam simplifies everything from a halachic point of view. It's one thing to, in Torah, even in the Talmud is inclusive of a lot of different aspects of including a Gadata, which is the story, the lessons, the drush, the medrash. The Rambam is simplifying Jewish. It was the first codifier to simplify Jewish law for everyone to be able to understand. So everything he includes in the book of Mishnah Torah is related somewhat to Jewish law. So the Torah already specified the tabernacle built by Moshe was only temporary. In other words, the Mishkan they built in the desert was a temporary edifice, as it says, "Ki lo yivasam ad ata." In other words, it was meant to be like a constant move. As soon as they entered Israel, so what did they do? They brought it to Gilgal, and it was in Gilgal for 14 years, during the time of when they conquered and divided the land of Israel amongst the tribes. I'm paraphrasing the text there a little bit, but you could read it on the screen and you'll get the gist. From there, they came to Shiloh. Shiloh was where it stayed for a really long time, almost as long as the first temple stood. It was there for 369 years. This is during the time as well of Eli HaKohen, the high priest Eli, and the birth of Shmuel. Is all during the time of Shiloh. When Eli passed away, so they moved it to Nov, and then when Shmuel passed away, they built a new one. Where in Givon, but then after Givon, it was the final straw before David HaMelech finally moved everything to Yerushalayim, moved the Aron to Yerushalayim. He didn't build the Beis HaMikdash yet, but he moved the center of the holiness to Yerushalayim, to Jerusalem. So here's a couple questions. I'm going to skip this part over here because this is, even though it has a halachic significance, I don't want to spend time on it right now. What I do want to understand is, if Yerushalayim is the eternal capital of the Jewish people, and if it's supposed to have this level of holiness, in fact, we're going to see soon, and I'm going to talk about it now just for a minute to illustrate this point. Hashem orchestrated many events to take place on the Temple Mount well before there was a temple. For example, Adam, it says in the Medrash, was created from the dirt of the Temple Mount. The first man was created from the soil of the Temple Mount, and according to most opinions, he built the altar that he brought a sacrifice on the Temple Mount. Even though that's not considered the Garden of Eden, but there's lots of discussion about exactly where the Garden of Eden was. Most people understand it to be in somewhere in Iraq. It's not there now because it was basically elevated to a spiritual world. But back when it was when the Garden of Eden was a physical world, so Adam was in charge of it. But his formation was in the Temple Mount. That's one example. The second most famous example is that's the place where Abraham was commanded to bring Yitzchak as a sacrifice, and Hashem said, "On the mountain that I will show you," and he saw the clouds of glory on the mountain of Mount Moriah, which is the Temple Mount, and that's where the sacrifice almost took place, and that's where the replacement, the ram, was sacrificed there on that place as well. When Yaakov was traveling from away to escape his brother Esav, and he was traveling to Lavan, so Hashem set the sun early, so he should rest on Mount Moriah, on the mountain that is currently known as the Temple Mount. Another story the Gemara tells us, which is a very famous story, as one of the things that made the Temple Mount, was the story of the two brothers. There was two brothers living on the Temple Mount, one on either side. One brother had a family of children, and the other brother lived alone. And each brother would constantly think about the state of the other brother. One brother, the brother with who lived alone, was always worried about the brother who had the children and having to take care of them. So they would harvest the fields together, and they would split the wheat at the end of the harvest, and they would each take half. But the brother who had no children would always, in the middle of the night, sneak over and bring some of the wheat to his brother who had a big family, to make sure he could feed his family. Meanwhile, the brother who had the family was concerned about his brother who was living alone. So he would also sneak in the middle of the night, and he would bring wheat as a way to comfort his brother. He should have extra, at least he should have extra wheat. So he would bring that wheat to his to his brother who lived alone. And one night it happened that they met in the middle of the night, each sneaking to bring wheat to the other one. They met in the middle of the night, and they embraced and they hugged, and that was a demonstration of the peace and the unity and the love that Hashem wanted to be the foundation for the Holy Temple. And that took place on Mount Moriah. So having said, now there's one more thing I want to add here as well. And this is, I'm going to use an example from the calendar. It says, Istakel b'Oraisa, it says in the Kabbalah, in Zohar, Istakel b'Oraisa of Ra'alma, that Hashem used the Torah as a blueprint for the world. This is a very important Jewish principle that is very different from what we might initially think, which is that Hashem created the world based on what the Torah says. So if the Torah says you cannot eat pig, so there has to be a pig. Hashem has to create a pig. It says honor your parents, so there has to be parents. It says, bring the fruits from the fourth year to Jerusalem, which we're reading right over here. So there has to be trees, there has to be fruits. In other words, the mitzvos, the Torah, the words of the Torah is what made the world the world. The calendar, the days that are holy, we don't celebrate Pesach because that's the day of the Exodus. The day of the 15th day of Nisan was already designated as a day of freedom, and that's why Hashem orchestrated the Exodus to happen on the 15th day of Nisan. And the same goes for Rosh Hashanah, the same goes for Yom Kippur, and the same goes for every single day, even though there's an event associated with it. But it's not that there was an event that just casually happened coincidentally, and therefore we celebrate that day. It's that Hashem designated that day for a holy or a happy or a solemn occasion, and therefore those events took place on that day. So it's not that the events happen and then we celebrate the day. It's that those days were already established by Hashem when they were created as a day for so and so, a day for such such type of things to happen, and therefore it was orchestrated that those things would happen. The same thing goes for places, for holiness in this case. Yerushalayim and the Temple Mount was designated already from creation as the holiest place in the world, even before there was a temple. So it's not that it's a holy place because of what took place on it, it's that it was already made holy when Hashem created the world. So that being the case, how come it took us so long to, over 500 years from when we entered the land of Israel, to finally establish the sacrifices and the temple in Yerushalayim? Why did it take us so long? Not only that, the first temple stood, for anyone know, 410 years. The second temple stood for 420 years. That's a total of 830 years. The Jewish people were in existence, and I'm counting from the giving of the Torah. Okay, and sorry, from the Exodus and the giving of the Torah. We were in existence since Abraham, but I'm going to start from, just for the sake of this exercise, I'm going to start from the Exodus and the year of the Exodus and giving of the Torah, which was 3,331 years ago. So we were in existence as a nation with a Torah, with commandments, with a specific guidelines and principles and everything else that comes with being Jewish. We've had that for 3,331 years. And we've only had the temple in Jerusalem for 830 years. I'm sorry, I'm not counting the last 70 years, because we all know that even though it's a united city, but there's plenty of challenges that are still present, and therefore we're not going to count that. So 830 years out of 3,331 years. That's barely a third, not even a third. I'm trying to think if it's less than a quarter or not. Either way, it's almost an insignificant amount of time compared to the time of our existence. So how come Yerushalayim, if Hashem wants Yerushalayim to be the gateway to heaven and the pinnacle and the holiest place in the world, how come we've only celebrated that, we've only existed in Yerushalayim with the temple for a fraction of the amount of time that we've existed as a nation? And let's look at these two verses that we're going to read now, which make the question even stronger. What does Hashem say? Hashem says that you have to bring truma and meiser of tithe your crops, wine and oil, as well as the firstborn of your cattle, which you would bring, which you would designate to be holy. And what do? You bring it. And by the way, the fourth year of the trees, the bikurim or the meiser sheni, those were also part of this. And you would bring it to the place of Hashem's choosing. Very cryptic, right? Let's look at this other pasuk here. I'm sorry. Here, I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to come back to this too. I'm sorry. Okay, never mind. I'm going to we'll have the discussion about these two verses soon. But now we're going to go through a lot of the historical events that took place in Yerushalayim. It's too much to skip and then come back, so we're going to do it. So, how did Adam know that? Sorry, let's go back to the Ramban that we skipped. 1 second. Here it is. So the Ramban writes like this: Shalem, in the pasuk in Tehillim, where it says Shalem, is talking about Yerushalayim, because it says that the tabernacle, in other words, the Mishkan, the holiness, was in Shalem, which is Jerusalem. From time immemorial, the nations knew that this was the preeminent location situated at the center of the inhabited world. It is possible they were also aware of the cosmic significance of this location. It is located directly under the celestial sanctuary where Hashem's presence is manifest. So Yerushalayim is literally the center of the world, the center of the universe, which is basically the pinnacle from where the rest of the universe was created. In other words, Hashem first created Yerushalayim, first created the spark of Yerushalayim, and from there created the rest of the land of Israel, and from there created the rest of the world, and from there created the rest of the universe. As much as science will challenge this is what Kabbalah tells us, that yes, even 2,500 years ago, Kabbalah describes the galaxies in the universe. However, it all started from this pinnacle, from this point of Yerushalayim, because this was the first manifestation of Hashem's energy and Hashem's presence in the world. So that's what the Ramban writes. Now, let's continue with the historical facts of Yerushalayim. So there's a widely held tradition that the location where David HaMelech and Shlomo HaMelech built an mizbeach, built an altar, that David purchased from Aravna, who was the king of Jerusalem during the time of King David, which we'll talk about in a second, is where Abraham also built the altar and brought Yitzchak. It's a well-known tradition, and the Rambam brings it up here in the Mishnah Torah. And not only that, this is where Noach, I forgot to mention this is where Noach built the altar after emerging from the ark. It says that the ark rested on the mountain after the water receded from the flood. So that mountain was the Harabayas, was the Mount Moriah, and that's where Noach built the altar after emerging from the ark. This is where Cain and Hevel built their altars as well, same place. Adam built an altar there and brought an offering to Hashem when he was created. And not only that, as we mentioned before, our sages proclaim that Adam was created on the very spot he received atonement. In other words, he was created from the dirt of the mountain of Moriah. So this is all in terms of the greatness of and the historical sense of Yerushalayim. Here's another fact that we talked about, is that when Yaakov was running away from his brother Esav, so on his way out of Israel, Hashem made him pass through Yerushalayim, and he set the sun early. And Yaakov was forced to rest on this Temple Mount, and he had a dream. And we know that this is famous. We know the dream. What did he see? He saw a ladder that was set firmly on the ground, but its top reached the heavens. And behold, the angels of Hashem ascended and descended the ladder. Let's take a look at this. Okay, there's many explanations about the ladder, but we're going to talk about the specific text where it says, Sulam mutzav arza, it was set firmly on the ground. A ladder, usually, one of the most important aspects of a ladder is that it has to, that's why they put that stuff on the bottom, it can't slip. And you also have to find a flat footing to put a ladder. So the Torah is pointing out that this ladder was firmly on the ground, and the top of it reached the heavens. So on a spiritual level, it's telling us that the ground of the Temple Mount, the ground of Yerushalayim, the ground of this spot, is the gateway, is the connector of the heavens, of the spiritual world. The spiritual worlds and the physical world meet at this exact spot. And that's why the angels were ascending and descending at this point, because this is the gateway, this is the entry point and the exit point of the spiritual worlds and the physical world. This is a fascinating element of the holiness of the spot. And here we just, illustrate that the location is the gateway to heaven. He was so overwhelmed by his epiphany. This is yet talking about Yaakov. Okay, so now it says that Yaakov, back continuing with the verses, it says that Yaakov woke up and he realized this place is a holy place, and he didn't realize. He was frightened, and he said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of Hashem. This is the gateway to Zeh Shara Shemayim. This is the gateway to heaven. So basically, Yaakov, this is the words of the Torah. This is in the pasuk. So Yaakov is basically telling us that this spot that he rested in, which is the Temple Mount, is the gateway to heaven. Okay. The Rabbi Elazar ben Horkinus, in his book of Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, which is translated, by the way, and it's available online in Sefaria. It's a phenomenal book, and it is full of Kabbalistic as well as midrashic insights, and it's honestly a fascinating read. So he writes regarding this. This teaches us that anyone who prays in Yerushalayim is considered to have prayed before the throne of Hashem's glory. Why? Because for the gateway to heaven is in Jerusalem. So when you go to the Kosel, when you go to the Western Wall, or in general, when you pray in Yerushalayim, or near as close as possible to the Temple Mount as you can, you're actually standing in front of the throne of Hashem, and it's literally as if you're at the closest spot that you could get to make your prayers the most meaningful. The gates are wide open in this place for our prayers to be heard. As the passage states, this is the gates to heaven. Okay. This is another fascinating fact about Yerushalayim, that Hashem's primary providence is over this land, the land of Israel. Hashem certainly pays attention to all other countries, but his primary concern and providence is over this land, because it says, Einei Hashem asher elekecha ba meishes shana nachas shana. This is the land that Hashem keeps his eye on from the beginning of the year until the end of the year. So this entire land, the land of Israel, extends to the rest of the world. So basically, the rest of the world gets its blessing from Hashem's providence, Hashem's concern with the land of Israel. So everything becomes sort of sustained and nurtured through Hashem's blessing to the land of Israel. It is like the heart that is positioned in the center of the body because it is the source of life, and it distributes its life force to all of the limbs. So the rest of the world is connected to the heart, but the heart of the world is the land of Israel. And maybe this is why whatever happens in the land of Israel seems to be always relevant to the rest of the world, one way or the other. And the rest of the world can't ignore what happens in the land of Israel, and maybe it's because of this. Okay. Let's skip this because it's sort of redundant to what we just read. And I really want to get to the here. This is what I wanted to get to. So remember, we read a pasuk before about that we're going to bring. So now we're back to our original question of why, if Jerusalem is all of these things and the gateway to heaven, and the mountain is the gateway to heaven, how comes that we've only been able to daven there and have the Beis Hamikdash there for such a short fraction of our existence? So there was a pasuk that we read before that talks about the tithing, that you should bring it to the place where Hashem is going to tell you. So over here also we have a similar pasuk, says, "Do not bring offerings in any place you choose to Hashem." In other words, you cannot build. Once the temple was established in Jerusalem, there was a ban, a Torah ban on all other altars. You cannot just build an altar and bring a sacrifice. It has to be in the Beis Hamikdash. You can't just decide, I'm going to build a altar in my backyard because I want to bring an offering to God. It's not your choice, it's Hashem's choice. And Hashem wants the offerings to take place in Jerusalem. So what does it say? Only in Pasuk Hey, in the fifth Pasuk, only in a place that Hashem will choose from among all of your tribal regions to set his name, there you will seek his presence. That is the place. You can't just make up your own place. This is the place where Hashem wants you to bring the sacrifices. And that's where you're going to bring the sacrifices. So it's pretty clear from these psukim that the Torah is establishing Yerushalayim as the center of all connection to Hashem and the prayer and the sacrifices. Well, let's take a look at this pasuk, a little bit different. What does it say? Bring all that I command you, your burnt offerings and sacrifices, to the place where Hashem, your God, will choose to establish his name. Beware lest you bring your burnt offerings to any other place you choose. So why can't the Torah just tell us straight out? You know, the first Rashi of the Torah, as we know, tells us that why does the Torah have to start with the creation of the world? And why does the Torah have to start with the whole story of Genesis and the flood? And not like the Torah is not a storybook, it's not a history book. The Torah is here to teach us how to live as a Jew. So why is the Torah giving us all these historical facts? So Rashi quotes from the Gemara from Rav Yitzchak that Hashem wanted to empower the Jewish people because there's going to be a time when the nations of the world will say that you guys stole the land of Israel. So the Torah wanted to give the Jewish people evidence and a strength of confidence that Hashem, to show that Hashem created the entire world, and Hashem decided to give the land of Canaan to the Jewish people, right? So from Bereshit bara Elokim, from the beginning of the Torah all the way until the mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh, which is in Parshas Bai, in the third portion of Exodus, that entire section of the Torah was just to give us the confidence and the assurance that we could respond to the nations in the world that the land belongs to us, right? How come the Torah can't just say the word Jerusalem? Why is the Torah being so cryptic in saying, bring it to the place where Hashem will choose? Building on our question of how come our time in Jerusalem was so minimal compared to our existence, and the temple's existence was such a minimal aspect we believe the world is existing for 5,783 years, right? So only 830 of that is when the temple existed in Jerusalem. This is the place, this is the gateway of Hashem's of the world that Hashem created. This is the source, this is the pinnacle where all the energy flows from God to the rest of the world. But how come it's not manifesting in reality? And how come the Torah is being cryptic over here? It's all part of the same question. So the Rebbe brings an interesting answer. And the reason why these verses that we read are in our parsha, in Parshas Re'eh. The word Re'eh itself means to see, which means that it's not enough for us to say that, you know, deep down, this is what no, we have to be able to see it. We have to be able to visualize it in reality. So the Rebbe gives an answer. Hashem chose Shiloh. Shiloh was where the Mishkan was for 369 years, where the tabernacle was, before the Beis HaMikdash was built. Only because of the prohibition to bring offerings elsewhere, this required a dedicated location to bring our offerings. So this tells us that it was not inherently holy, rather it was chosen for a particular reason, for a strategic reason. Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, is different. Hashem did not choose it to provide for a particular concern. Rather, Hashem chose it to be his place. And since it was his place, it is only right that we bring our offerings there. He chose Shiloh for the sake of the Jews, to give them a place to bring the offerings. He chose Yerushalayim for himself. As it were, he chose a place of which to dwell. So let me break this down. The Shiloh was an essential location, and there was a mitzvah to pilgrimage to the Mishkan 3 times a year. So you had Jews living throughout the land of Israel, and they had to come to the Mishkan, to the tabernacle. We're talking, it was a period of over 500 years before the Beis HaMikdash was built. So there needed to be a strategic location for the Jewish people to come to, and they also needed a place to bring their sacrifices. So for the sake of the Jewish people, the city of Shiloh was dedicated to be that place. Not because Shiloh itself was holy, it just was needed and it was necessary for that moment or for those times. So in other words, it was chosen for the sake of the Jewish people. Yerushalayim, on the other hand, was a city that Hashem chose well before the world was even created. And it was chosen because that is the city that Hashem dedicated to be holy. Not because of its strategic value, not because of its strategic location, or not because of anything that happened there. It's an inherent place where Hashem calls home, and is the center of where Hashem chooses to extend the energy to the rest of the universe from. So there's something inherently different about Yerushalayim. So it's not the answer yet, but this is an introduction to the answer. So now, let's talk about the history. I know there's going to be a text here in a minute or two, but I want to get to it right now. There's a historical reason why the Jewish people did not immediately go to Yerushalayim when they conquered the land of Israel. And that is because of a oath that Abraham made with Avimelech, who was the king of the Philistines at the time. And Abraham made a peace treaty with Avimelech that he will not, there's a lot of details to that, but the main point is that he will not evict the descendants of Avimelech from their land. Avimelech was a smart person, and in fact, he knew with prophecy that the Jewish people are destined to come back to the land of Canaan. And he was trying to protect his descendants from being uprooted in a violent way. So he asked Abraham to make him that oath. And that oath was written and signed. So when the Jewish people, they were bound to that oath, they could not, and since the descendants of Avimelech moved to Yerushalayim, so as a way to respect that oath, they refused to go to Yerushalayim to break that oath. All the way until David HaMelech, King David, what happened is the dwellers of Jerusalem violated the oath in the first place, and then they weren't even the same people anymore. So David HaMelech basically had enough proof to conquer Jerusalem. However, he did not want the Temple Mount to be acquired through conquering for several reasons. So he bought with money the Temple Mount from the king of Jerusalem, whose name was Aravna. And the reason why he bought it with money is, number one, is he didn't want the house of Hashem to be built on a place that was acquired through violence. Number one, and it's one of the reasons why David couldn't build the temple, because he fought too many wars. And number two, he didn't want that his descendants, right, and his nation, the Jewish people, for all the future generations, should have a claim to the Temple Mount just because they won a war, because then someone else could win the war. That's why he acquired it with money, so it should be an actual transaction where he owns it, where now the Jewish people own it forever. So now let us go to that's a beautiful picture. That's the Beis Hamikdash and the Temple Mount. By the way, the western wall is like the bottom of the platform on which the Beis Hamikdash, the actual Beis Hamikdash, was built. It wasn't one of the walls of the temple itself. It was the wall of the platform of where the Beis Hamikdash was built. But now let us try to get to the answer of our question, because this is really the question right here. If Yerushalayim is so important and central to Hashem and to our people, why didn't our ancestors establish a temple there in the first place right away? So this is the answer we just spoke about, that the Yevusim, the descendants of Avimelech, were living in Yerushalayim until they were until. So this is part of the oath that they took with Abraham. And this is the verses where that oath took place. Now swear by Hashem that you will not lie to me and my children and my grandchildren, treat me with kindness that I showed you concerning the land of which you lived in. So in other words, this is where Avimelech made him swear that they're not going to evict their descendants. Now, here's when Jerusalem was conquered. In the days of David, the generations covered by this pledge had already passed away, and therefore the oath was no longer binding, and David HaMelech was able to conquer Jerusalem. However, he didn't want it to be built with violence, so therefore he purchased the land, purchased the Temple Mount. I know we still didn't answer the question yet, but this is just the backstory. So Aravna asked David HaMelech, why did my master the king come to my home? So David replied, I came to purchase your thrashing floor for the purpose of erecting an altar for Hashem upon it. And David purchased the threshold floor and the cattle, and David erected an altar there and placed the burnt offering and peace offering upon it, which was basically the establishing the Temple Mount as the holiest place in the world. So now let us answer our question. Why was Yerushalayim not, and why was the Beis Hamikdash not built? Because the fact that we were trying to keep an oath for Abraham, yeah, it makes sense, from a logical point of view. But if Hashem is in charge of the world, everything that happens, Hashem is in full control of. Hashgacha pratis is a core value of Judaism. Every single thing that happens, every chain of event that happens, is orchestrated by Hashem constantly. The only thing that we do have control of is how we respond, our free choice. But what happens in the world is controlled by Hashem. So how come Jerusalem was not part of our Jewish experience for the majority of our time as being Jews? And how come the Beis Hamikdash was not built in Jerusalem for the majority of the time either? So the answer is very cryptic, but the answer is here. David HaMelech was the first king that had the ability to unite all of the Jewish people. Shaul HaMelech, who was a very, very good king, let's not knock Shaul, but he did not have the full unity and the backing of the entire the people. David somehow managed to unite the entire nation. The word Yerushalayim, which what do we say means? It means peace, right? Shalom. It comes from the word shalom. It means peace. As I think we learned this the last week or 2 weeks ago, but the essence of Hashem's energy, the essence of Hashem's existence is unity. And when Hashem creates the world, he allows his energy to be divided into multiple levels and elements, so there could be a physical existence where we feel a sense of independency. But the essence of Hashem is still, unity is still one. That's why we say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. That Hashem is one. We don't say Hashem is Yachid. We don't say he's the only one. We say he's one. In other words, he's united with everything. Unity, by definition, is godly. Disunity, or fraction, or fragmentation, is anti-God. Is basically the concealment of Hashem. When we're united, we have the ability to draw down that energy of that essence, that energy of Hashem. Interestingly, one of the reasons why we say Tehillim, we say Psalms when somebody is sick, as a way to pray for their recovery, is because David HaMelech represents the essence of unity, because he was able to unite the Jewish people and bring them to Jerusalem, because he merited the conquering of Jerusalem and the buy and the purchase of the Temple Mount. He merited that because he had the unity of the Jewish people behind him, and he wrote the book of Psalms. So during that period, they were able to draw down the essence of Hashem. The holiness, the essence, the purity of Hashem was revealed because of the unity that was expressed. Shlomo HaMelech, which the word Shlomo is from the same word as Yerushalayim, Shalom, peace, unity, was able to live and embody that greatness that was revealed through David HaMelech, through King David. What happens, and I'm going to explain the Tehillim thing in a second. What happened after Shlomo HaMelech passed away? So his son Rechavam elevated the taxes, and that's, as we know, the tribes split. 10 tribes went up north, and the kingdom of Israel was split. As soon as that happened, Hashem's energy, or Hashem's revelation of Hashem was concealed, and it opened the door for a lot of pain and suffering to come down to us, including illness. When we say Tehillim, what we're trying to do is bring down that energy, that essence of Hashem, reveal the essence of Hashem that David was able to reveal during his time. So by saying Tehillim, we're accepting the yoke of King David, which is basically our way of unifying the Jewish people. And by doing that, we could reveal the source and the essence of Hashem, which will automatically transform the negativity, including illnesses, from the negativity to the positive. That's why we say Tehillim. Because the unity of that was revealed during David HaMelech was the power that brought godliness and brought the essence of Hashem in a revealed state, a re'eh state, to Jerusalem, and made Yerushalayim capable of the Beis HaMikdash being built. So it's not that Yerushalayim is still the gateway to heaven. Yerushalayim is still is Hashem's choice of the world. Of the most important part of the world. It's where the energy of Hashem comes to the rest of the world. However, we can't just say because of that, we're going to build the Beis HaMikdash. We have to be worthy of it. So for the first 500 years, they had to work to get to the point of where they were by David HaMelech's time and reach that level of unity to now merit to draw down Hashem's essence and to reveal it in Yerushalayim. And that's why they were dancing around in all these places before they were able to reach Yerushalayim. Once they reach Yerushalayim, now they can build the Beis HaMikdash because now they're married. What happened afterwards, after the split? So there were problems. Yeravim ben Nevat, who was the first king of the 10 tribes, he erected idols up north, so they wouldn't come to the temple. So the temple was already losing its holiness because it didn't have the whole Jewish people. It lost its unity. So the reason why the Beis Hamikdash was only revealed for such a limited amount of time of our history is because it takes a lot of work to get to the point where we could reveal the holiness of Yerushalayim and be able to see it with our own eyes and experience it and have it. So right now, where we're in a fragmented world and Hashem's essence is revealed and Hashem's essence is concealed and Hashem's energy is concealed, and the world is at least in the outside appears to be very dark. So we're limited that all we have right now is a wall. Even though Yerushalayim is a beautiful city, it's still right now, it's all we're able to experience in Yerushalayim is a wall. We know that the holiness is there, it's just not revealed. However, once we reach the point, once we put in the work that was put in by the Jewish people for the 500 years before David HaMelech, which we have been for the last 2,000 years, which is why we ask for Mashiach, is because once we merit that, once we are able to get to that point and even higher, we will merit the revelation of Hashem's essence that will draw down and make Yerushalayim and reveal what Yerushalayim was as the center of the universe once again. And it still is, but it's not revealed, and we need to reveal that. So that answers why Yerushalayim was only in our hands for such a fraction of our existence, as well as the Beis Hamikdash. However, it doesn't negate the fact that it is the center of the universe and the holiness of the universe, and will once again be that way once we're able to once we merit and are worthy of that revelation to take place in Yerushalayim. So let's continue. Rabbi Yeshua, the son of Levi, says, Yerushalayim is built like a city joined together, as a city that binds the Jewish people together. Yerushalayim is about unity. It's about bringing everyone together. It represents the essence of unity. And therefore, in order for us to merit Yerushalayim, we have to be united. We have to have that same level of unity in order to appreciate the greatness of Yerushalayim. Jewish unity requires two elements. Number one, the role of Yerushalayim is to unite the nation as a single body. It is written, Yerushalayim is built up like a city joined together. From there, the tribes ascend. By making a national pilgrimage to Yerushalayim, all Jews facing in one direction, the particular organs of the collective coalesced into a single body. Yerushalayim was thus a nation like a heart that pumps oxygen through the body. That's one level of unity. But number two, the kingdom of David HaMelech brought the nation into a single unceasing rulership. And it is written, for there sat thrones of judgment, thrones for the house of David. David's kingdom was to the nation like a brain that provides awareness and intelligence and coordination to the body. Only after David HaMelech was able to unite the nation could the temple be built in Jerusalem. This established a permanent presence for Hashem among the people and bound the people to Hashem. So ultimately, we need to reveal the source and that unity that existed, that was able to be achieved by David HaMelech. So even though it's there, but it's not revealed. And therefore, we want to reveal it once again, and hopefully it will be very soon with the coming of Mashiach. So we have an everlasting connection to Yerushalayim. It is representative of the unity, of the essence of who we are, and will once again, God willing, very soon be that revealed source of spirituality throughout the world, where Hashem uses Yerushalayim as the gateway to the rest of the world. L'chaim, may it happen very, very soon.